everything I thought I was going to do was completely wrong. But what you've got to understand is that I went from being a tech entrepreneur who worked as a computer hacker in like the guts of Silicon Valley to launching a major movement, the biohacking movement, launching a brand, 4 New York Times bestselling books. Do you think my degree in information systems had anything to do with that? Nothing whatsoever. What it had to do with was, let's go.
He was a college kid who weighed over 300 pounds and had a whole bunch of health issues, and he was majoring in computer information systems. And when doctors couldn't figure out how to make him healthy, he decided to use that computer programming know-how and his mindset to hack his own biology. That has led him on a lifelong quest to try to optimize his own health and to help others do the same. On this episode of This Magic Life, we're going to get a masterclass from the one and only Dave Asprey. He is best known as the founder of Bulletproof, which is a super successful coffee and lifestyle brand. He's also the CEO of Upgrade Labs, and he's the founder of what came to be known as the biohacking movement. Dave is also a 4-time New York Times bestselling author, including his latest book, Smarter, Not Harder. Welcome to This Magic Life.
I'm so happy to be here, especially because you're talking with a group of people who are where I started my journey when I was young. Like I didn't look like this. I didn't feel like this. I didn't have this career. I didn't have this kind of success. It's almost like not even related. When people see a photo of me when I was 21 versus now, and like, you're lying.
Right.
Like, that's Photoshopped. I'm like, no, it's not. So that just, no one knows the future for themselves. Some of us can tell the future, like you can predict something big, but you're not supposed to know. Right? And if you're just curious and you have serendipity and you don't just follow your passion, because my passion might have been baguettes, espresso, and video games, and maybe that wouldn't have ended as well as this passion. But find things that are inspiring and interesting to you and that make a good living. And when you do that, you can start working on yourself. But most of the time, even when I talk with my teenagers, like, how am I supposed to know what to study in college? I mean, good news. If you thought you knew what you were supposed to do, you'd be wrong. So the fact that you don't know is a good thing.
Yes.
Right. And whatever you get a degree in, the odds of you actually doing that 20 years from now are about 1%.
Well, I want to ask you more about that
Sure.
in a minute. As you know, the show is called This Magic Life because I want our viewers to appreciate that the unpredictable, the serendipity that is going to happen in their lives is something that they can't predict now. And to take comfort in that, and rather than trying to control their future, to recognize that they can start anywhere.
You sure can. I ended up getting a degree in information systems and AI back in, when did I do that? It was the late 90s, a while ago. And but there were very few places you could even study AI. And I really wanted to be the IT guy. And I ended up going to Silicon Valley and I became an entrepreneur, which is not what the IT guy does. It was kind of the opposite. I was at the company that held Google's first servers when Google was just 2 guys and 2 computers. And I co-founded the consulting part of this company. Magically, it grew to be $36 billion in market cap. And I was attending board meetings at a public company by the time I was 27. I wasn't allowed to speak at the board meetings, but I could listen. And the business that I helped to start did $100 million a quarter at its peak. I wanted to be the guy who fixed your computers. It just happened. So I'm like, I don't know, I'm lazy. I was like, maybe we could do this cloud computing thing, right? Right place, right time. I didn't know I would be an entrepreneur like that. And then I didn't know that company would go bankrupt. I was set for life. I had $6 million when I was 26. I lost it when I was 28. Right? And I thought when I'm 26, I'm like, okay, I'm just going to finish making my money. in the next 2 years. Then I'll get a PhD in psychopharmacology and neuroscience. It's going to be so fun. I didn't do any of that. Everything I thought I was going to do was completely wrong. But what you've got to understand is that if you allow for curiosity, which is the antidote for fear, you will see that there's always something to do in front of you. And you'll also notice that when something's really on your path, it'll be laid in front of you 3 times. If there's a book you're supposed to read, 3 different people are going to mention it to you over the course of a week. I just promise you, if that happens, read the damn book. There's a reason that the universe is putting it there for you. And if this thought just keeps coming into your head, like, I got to do this, you can listen to the thought, or you can use your ego and your intellect to suppress it. That's intuition. And there are things you can do to train your intuition. And by the way, I didn't believe any of this when I was in college. I thought it was all bullshit. But when I got really sick and things didn't work, I started learning from people in their 70s and 80s. And I ended up running one of the first longevity and anti-aging research groups, a nonprofit in Silicon Valley. In Palo Alto, we met by Stanford University. And I'm learning from these guys 3 times my age who are faster and smarter and healthier than I am. I'm like, oh my gosh, what are they doing? They're meditating. Like, meditation's for idiots. By the way, that's what everyone believed 20 years ago. And then, about 12 years ago, I'm like, actually, this is what successful people do. And I've been pushing really hard on personal development. But when I ran out of stuff from my doctor, I went to Tibet.
Before you went to Tibet, actually, because you said you had this, I think you were like 28 years old, and you said you wanted to go to Mount Kailash in Tibet.
Mount Kailash.
Kailash, rather,
Yeah.
which seems like a super random thing
Here's how
for
that
a young
happens.
person to want to do.
I had always been interested in, esoteric things. Like, you see these stories of people meditating while they're asleep and lucid dreaming and things like that. So this had been interesting. And I read about it. And I read this article in, I think it was Outside Magazine, and it was about the most remote mountain in the world that people would do this pilgrimage to. And it's the Mount Olympus, but of the East. And in my undergrad, I was 1 class away from a religious studies minor. Not that I am some religious enlightened person. I was just padding my GPA. I needed classes. How can you fail in a religious studies class? You just say whatever the hell you want, say it's a religion, and then they give you an A. It didn't seem that hard. So, truth be told. But I learned something about this. I said, this is so weird. You have to drive on dirt roads for 5 days, and then people do this incredible 26-mile pilgrimage around this crazy holy mountain that no one's ever climbed. And people go there to die. And then they throw the bodies off the side and the birds eat them. And there's these giant birds, like as big as this room almost, that are human fed. I think that means they're vegan. But it's because humans are vegan, right? I'm very confused. If you guys know the answer, if you could just leave that in the comments, I'd be so thankful. Anyway, I'll try to be consistent.
Yes.
So I'm there, and I didn't even know that I was going to go to Mount Kailash. I had finished my first big job. I had made and lost millions of dollars. I said, I'm going to learn meditation from the masters. I'll go to the source. So I spent 10 days at a monastery in Nepal, learning advanced meditation techniques. And one of the people who was in my class said, I want to go to Mount Kailash. I'm like, oh my God, that was on my list from like 10 years ago. So total serendipity, was not on my plan. And then the next day we hopped on a bus from Lhasa where were we? From Nepal to Lhasa. So 5 days in a bus and then 5 days in a 4-wheel drive. And we're at this place where it's 10 degrees below zero, 30-mile-an-hour winds, 18,000 feet elevation. And we're there when there's not supposed to be tourists. And most of the little mud huts where they feed you with yak dung heated food, like this is as remote as it gets, they're closed. So you could die. And I'm walking around this mountain and I'm feeling really bad because you're supposed to feel bad under those conditions. Like, this is advanced mountaineering territory. And then this little Tibetan woman, half my height, gives me a bowl of yak butter tea. And I drink it and my brain turned on. I'm like, what? Like I'm supposed to feel like death. And all of a sudden I feel so relaxed and happy and I'm focused. And it was so strong that I finished walking around the mountain and I came back to Silicon Valley and I bought some butter and bought some tea, and it tasted like crap and it didn't work. And I said, all right, I'll buy $1,000 worth of expensive teas. It didn't work. So I bought 25 kinds of butter and 2 kinds of butter worked, the grass-fed butter, because the kind of fat you eat matters. And then I tested coffee. I'd given up coffee for 5 years because it made me jittery and cranky, and had a cup of coffee, really good coffee. I felt so good. I'm like, the heavens opened and like God's talking to me. Okay, not quite, but it felt like that. It was coffee, right? So the next day I had a different cup of coffee and I felt like garbage. I'm like, it wasn't me, it was the coffee. And that led me to create Bulletproof. By the way, guys, I'm a tech entrepreneur. I still spent more years in tech as I was percolating on this idea of coffee. And when I launched the coffee, it was truly an experiment. The market size was 0. I just didn't want to tweak when I drank coffee. And that led to me growing a $100 million a year company called Bulletproof. And now my second coffee company is called Danger Coffee. And so as now a serial entrepreneur, I went from being a tech entrepreneur who worked as a computer hacker in like the guts of Silicon Valley to launching a major movement, the biohacking movement, launching a brand, 4 New York Times bestselling books. Do you think my degree in information systems had anything to do with that? Nothing whatsoever. What it had to do with was a burning desire to not be fat and to feel good all the time, to have enough energy, to have regulated emotions, to have a body that just didn't hurt. And to be able to do that and to learn from my elders at the anti-aging group, to be able to learn from the gurus and masters in the Andes and the Himalayas, different places around the world, to be able to glue electrodes to my head and look at my brainwaves, even start a neuroscience company that does this for high-end entrepreneurs now. It's crazy. All of this happened because of curiosity and because I was willing to say yes to going to Mount Kailash when I didn't even know I was going to go.
And because this is the quintessential example of magic. Because sometimes magic is fairy dust. It's like, you know, you meet somebody and they open a door to your dream company. And other times it's black magic. It's weighing 300 pounds. It's having brain fog. It's feeling anxious and depressed and doubting your own intelligence and getting pushed or pulled in a direction that you didn't anticipate. I will tell you, Dave, that I also went to Tibet. I didn't go to Mount Kailash, but I went to Lhasa and I drank yak butter tea and it made me throw up for 3 days.
Not very delicious.
It was disgusting. I didn't think, oh, let me go and test like different types of butter and try it with tea or maybe try it with coffee. In a way, like the universe, I feel, was putting this in front of you early on when you were selling those e-commerce t-shirts before e-commerce existed with the caffeine is my drug or all this other stuff.
That's why there's a caffeine molecule.
Yeah.
It's a tattoo on my arm.
Exactly. But it was like this was the universe telling you, right? Dave, go in this direction. Right?
It is.
Your intuition. So tell me what that felt like. How did you know?
Let's talk about intuition. So at this point, I run essentially a digital mystery school, and I have studied with gurus all over the planet. Some of them have reached out to me, and it's always an honor because it just happens. I become friends with Joe Dispenza and some of the gurus from India and shamans of global reputation, and done training with a lot of these people. And I've always just said, oh, that sounds like something I should do. But there's a very specific set of feelings around intuition, and they're actually different for men and women. And when you study with someone like Mantak Chia, who's a famous Qigong teacher, or several others, they even write about this. So if you're a guy and you're getting a signal that like, oh, that's something I should do.
What do you mean by signal?
Well, your body's going to tell you. There's
like
something
tingles?
There's something called interoception. This is the felt sense of what's happening in the body. So most guys, especially if we're anxious or depressed or stressed, we just shut off everything from the neck down. Like, look, if it's not like blood spurting out, whatever, like we're okay. And then we think about it a lot. You don't think about intuition. What you do is you get in a relaxed state. And there's lots of different ways to do that, even just basic breath work. And someone who's going for a walk, it doesn't really matter. Just without headphones, without listening to my podcast or your podcast, just quiet. And then your mind wanders. And when your mind is wandering, the body feels, and maybe a thought comes in, and all of a sudden you feel like a tingle. For me, it started out like the back of the neck. Like I had this amazing idea in 1993. What I didn't know that I wish I knew is that people want to help you. If you ask for help, you're giving someone else a gift because it feels good to help people. So when you say, hey, I could use a hand. And if I think about this, you might have heard of Mark Andreessen. Mark's a multi-billionaire. So he and I are about the same age. He wrote the first web browser. I did the first e-commerce. I launched the first cloud computing offering one day before he did when he ran a company called LoudCloud. So we're contemporaries. Okay, he's a multi-billionaire. I'm not. Why? Well, when he wrote the first web browser, he drove in a car to Silicon Valley, found a guy running $1 billion company and said, help me. And I sat there and I said, I know everything. I don't need any help. I'm not going to ask for any help. I'll just figure it out on my own. And that's the difference. So Mark is in a really good place and he's doing all sorts of interesting things. So am I, right? So it's not like it's a race. But what I'm offering here is that if you can face the fear of saying, I don't know, can I have some help? If you ask someone who has already done it, all they want to do is the same reason you and I are here. We just don't want you to go through all the crap we went through. Like that's why I've written 3,000 blog posts and 1,200 hours of podcast interviews and 8 books. If you take the time to do that, I promise you, you won't suck at feeling good as much as I did.
So you mentioned the tingly feeling.
Let's talk about the rest of this.
For guys. Yeah. What about for women?
So that's how it starts for guys. And what you'll find is that at first, when you start turning on your ability to sense energies, the back of the neck for both men and women, then it goes to your hands. And this is also for guys. I'm going to get to women in a second. Then it goes, if you're really in an advanced practice or doing Qigong, you'll do feet, because this is where the most nerve endings are. And then finally, reproductive organs for guys. For women, though, we've all heard of a woman's intuition. Well, women feel more intuition in their gut than guys do. We will feel it in our gut, but we tend to feel threats there, and women feel a lot more in their gut because you have a way more complex set of nerves inside of you than we do. And this goes back to science, and people saying, well, Dave, how dare you? Well, I studied this extensively. They are the original sensors of reality in your body. They are quantum behavioring things. They're actually all talking to each other at multiple levels. And so it's like a distributed intelligence inside your body. That's not you. It does its own thing and then hands reality to you. Well, you as a woman have 100,000 mitochondria per cell in your ovaries. And men, the most we have is 15,000 in our brain and our heart, same as women. So women oftentimes feel their things first. If you're tuned in, you're going to feel it in your lower abdomen. And it's like just an inner knowing. And honestly, this is why the women in my life, I'm like, what does your intuition say? And I have highly trained intuition. Like I could do stuff. I can make the future happen, all kinds of cool things. But I recognize that I don't have the same hardware for intuition that women do. And this is one of the reasons that women are precious and that men and women are different, right? And so that's one of the things you look for. So you're like, did I feel it in my gut? And women are going to feel it in their gut before men do. We're going to feel it like on the back of our neck because that's how we detect like a predator about to eat our family.
Oh, that's
right?
so cool. Yeah. I love that. I actually have felt tingles all over
that's a good
my
sign.
Body. I have felt like that, like light up. And that's what has inspired me to move in different directions. You mentioned curiosity. Are there any other qualities that you think our viewers and listeners could try to cultivate mindfully in order to attract more magic in their lives?
And the first thing is that if you say to yourself that you're a skeptic, stop. Don't believe that the glass is half empty. Don't believe the glass is half full. Instead, believe that there's a glass and be curious about what's inside, because it could be half full of poison. You just don't know. So be curious instead of already knowing ahead of time.
Ask questions.
Ask questions. And if you find yourself already knowing without knowing why you know, it's probably your body lying to you about something. And that's okay. Bodies will do that. So curiosity, that's where that is. But the other one is gratitude. And gratitude is proven to change your mental state. You cannot be afraid and grateful. You cannot be afraid and curious. So if you find yourself feeling anxious and triggered, I wonder what caused that. Could it be the Chick-fil-A and the diet soda? Or could it be that, I almost got in a car accident, right? I wonder why my body's acting this way because it's not what I want it to do, right? Because if you recognize you're not your body, then all of a sudden maybe I'm having a hardware problem. It's so weird. I wonder what I could do about that. I heard on Andrea's podcast that if I did this kind of breath work, oh, look, 4 breaths later, I'm not stressed anymore. Who would have thought? Right? And then after the curiosity, then comes the gratitude. I'm grateful for, and it doesn't matter what you're grateful for. You can be grateful that you still have both hands. It can be the dumbest thing, but turning on the feeling in your heart of gratitude, not the thought of gratitude, but actually, just a little feeling. And you can turn any feeling on you want. You can turn on happiness. You can try on enlightenment right now if you know what it feels like. It's like you can play any feeling in your body. You can try it right now. Like try and feel stress. And like your whole manner will change. You can turn it on. And then what's the feeling of when you have like a puppy and you're just holding a puppy, right? Like there's a melting of the heart. We can all do this all the time. So gratitude has a feeling like that when you're truly grateful. Like imagine when a friend just brought you a gift and like that was so thoughtful. Like it's real gratitude. You play that feeling, you cannot be afraid. So then what you do is anytime you're feeling tweaked, like, oh, I wonder why. What happened I can be grateful for? Right? So the guy cut you off in traffic and it really pissed you off. Well, you'd be grateful that he was on the way to the hospital to see his first baby being born. Or maybe he's just a dick. It doesn't really matter, but choose the gratitude path because your life will be better.
You're a trend spotter. You've been that way since you were a teenager.
Yeah. And a maker sometimes.
And a maker.
Yeah.
What trends are you looking at right now that you see kind of just over the hill that you'd love to kind of put in front as an offering to our viewers and listeners to give them a head start?
I'm looking at a backlash against cheap crap. A backlash against even AI. And I use AI. I think you ought to be using AI in your life because it's like using a word processor instead of a typewriter. It's just a tool. But I actually don't want people to generate crappy content based on stuff we already know and just to rehash stuff that's probably wrong and then use AI to make it more manipulative and give it to me. So people are going to want to see real content. And people want stuff made by people. There's a reason Etsy's blowing up. So if you're looking for what's going to matter, grass-fed agriculture is where it's at. If you know how to run a permaculture farm, you will be very highly paid coming up. And you'll get to be outdoors, which makes you live longer. You get to eat real food and everything. By the way, I've built a 32-acre regenerative agriculture farm where I raise my kids. So I'm not just saying this. I put my money where my mouth is. Did I do this 14 years ago? Yeah, I'm an early trend spotter and trend setter. And a lot of people are now leaving cities to do that. And if you're young, you don't have a lot of debt.
Well,
if you're
yes,
in college,
they do. If they're in
I was
college,
going to say,
yeah.
It took me 10 years to pay off my college loans too.
Yeah.
And of course, there's that, oh my God, you'll be homeless. I'll tell you a little story. Before I had any money, I bought a place in Tahoe. I was going to live there. In fact, I did live there for a while and commuted to Silicon Valley when I needed to. Problem was I bought it for $500,000 and the housing market crashed. It was worth $100,000. It's going to take me 20 years to be worth it. The government said you can renegotiate your loans with the bank. They'll lower them. Wells Fargo wouldn't do it. So I gave them the keys. I said, you can have it. Didn't foreclose. It's called deed to close or deed to trust or something. And of course they put it on my credit report. So for 7 years, didn't pay for his house. I'm a multimillionaire today. I lived. Wasn't a big deal. If you like permaculture, go do it. You want massage? Learn how to be good at massage and you'll make a ton of money right now. And it's a skill that'll serve you for at least 20 years. So there's all sorts of things that are human, that are healing, where we connect with each other. Humans are starving for connection. So if you say, I'm going to be a matchmaker, right? I'm going to host things. These are all things that AI sucks at. And no one wants cheap crap from Amazon anymore. They want it handmade in quality. Learn how to do ceramics. People will pay $100 for a ceramic plate you make because you made it, because we all know it's better that way. And you see all this shiny crap advertised everywhere. if you make it and it's personalized, it's going to be valuable and you can find a market. And I say this, you say, Dave, what do you know? Well, guys, I welded Toyota truck frames. I put car parts in boxes for 5 years as I was paying for college. I worked at Baskin Robbins for a couple of years, scooping ice cream. So I built all this stuff and had an enormous amount of debt when I got out of college. So this isn't, me lecturing to you that it's not so bad. It's as bad as it's ever been. I'm just telling you that there are a lot of people getting old with a ton of money and they want to give it to you for stuff that's real. And the stuff that Amazon sells is mostly crap. And the stuff that you find online is mostly crap. So be real. And being real is the new trend for the future. Being in person, connecting with humans, experiences that are not on VR goggles, that are not some Web3 nonsense. Experiences that are real, where you can see and smell and touch and taste another person. Well, maybe you shouldn't taste them unless they're really your friend.
Okay, yeah, a good friend. So, the trends that you have led, obviously the bulletproof coffee, the functional coffee, the collagen.
Yeah, I made collagen into $1 billion business.
Collagen, MCT oil, all this stuff came without studying agriculture, without studying medicine, without studying biology, without studying any of the subjects that you might think would have been important. So what is the lesson for students who may be stressing right now that they studied the wrong thing, that their major is not going to be useful? The value of how to think about the transferable skills that you are developing no matter what you're studying.
Okay. Here's the good news. You totally studied the wrong thing. It's 100% guaranteed. As a guy who's hired probably about 1,000 people over my career, I don't care what you studied. I don't care where you went to school.
Or your GPA.
Oh, God, no. Who cares? I have no idea where my CFO went to school. I actually don't know where any of my executive team went to school, and I just don't give two shits, and neither does any other entrepreneur. You know what we care about? What can you do, and what kind of a human being are you? I would rather hire someone who can just figure stuff out and be willing to make mistakes and correct them. I will tell you something most people don't know. When I was starting Bulletproof, I was a VP at a large computer security company. I really am a computer hacker. And I didn't have time. I had 2 young kids, just moved to a new country. I've spent all of my money. I have $10,000 left to my name in liquid assets. I had other stuff, but sometimes you have, cars and stuff, but you don't have cash. And I'm going to start a company. That's crazy. That's probably the worst time when you have all this debt and all these responsibilities. So how do I do this? So I ended up getting a side consulting deal. I'm teaching hedge fund managers how to raise their IQs. That was my seed capital for Bulletproof. And the guy who'd built most of the first infrastructure, like web stuff and all that, he was a 23-year-old. And he'd shown me in another project that he could just figure stuff out, even though he was willing to make a ton of mistakes. So I paid him. He lived in his grandmother's basement. I paid him a small amount of money, and a very small on a monthly basis. And I said, well, we'll share success with you, but I just can't afford more. And he worked his ass off, and he made tons of mistakes. Cost me at least $10 million. But that's okay. It made me at least 50. It didn't matter. So the fact that he could do that meant that when his went through his growth phase at the company, and it was time for him to go, he walked away with $250,000. By the time he was about 26, 27, helped him buy his first house. Right? So the fact that he did or didn't go to college, I don't know, because I don't care. What I cared about was that I said, hey, I need this done. Can you figure it out? And he said, He went to this let me Google that for you website. He Googled it. Most of adulting is just going online and asking how to get it done and then doing it. It's not that hard. And if you can do that and you just have the balls to look at someone who's hired you and say, I don't know how to do that, but I'll figure it out. Give me a day to tell you how long it's going to take. And then you close your eyes and you go, okay, it looks like it's going to take a week. And then you tell them it's going to take a week and it's going to take 5 days. Okay, fine. and just be willing to be wrong and to tell the people you work with when it's not going to go the way you thought it was. But most of us, when we're young, including me, for God's sake, it's like, it feels like you're going to die if you fail. So you try to hide it. And then that employers are like, we're out. So all you have to do is be someone who's truthful and can figure out how to get stuff done and isn't afraid to try. If you do that, entrepreneurs will hire you all day long and you'll go up and up and up and up. And that's magic. It doesn't matter what your degree is. My degree is in information systems. I built I don't know how much total revenue, like $600 or $700 million consumer packaged goods company with a degree in IT. I've written New York Times bestselling science books on biology with a degree in IT.
Because you followed your curiosity.
Just did the work, right? Degrees aren't work. Degrees are sparkly baubles. So it's, who are you? Can you work? Can you figure stuff out?
Dave, one of the biggest pressures for college students, especially for juniors and seniors, is thinking about that first post-grad step, because they feel that if they don't pick the right job, if they don't pick the right industry, they are fucked.
Yeah.
What is the truth about your first few jobs after you graduate?
Your first few jobs are there to deprogram you from all the nonsense you picked up in college. Literally, they don't teach you any useful skills. Modern universities probably taught you beliefs about the world that are not even real. And they probably taught you that you're a victim of circumstance. It's so funny. Anytime anyone thinks they're a victim, studies show that you will then be more ready and willing to criticize other people for not doing what you want, and you will call for harsher punishments for them. When you come into a business, your job is to learn, not to tell the management what to do. And if you got taught by your university that it's your job to be an activist employee, you probably should just be homeless now and be done with it, because it's not how it works. Your job is to learn the culture. Your job is to support your boss, not undermine them. And when you do that, magically, your boss wants to help you, right? It's not that hard to be trustworthy, but we all know it takes 2 years, because whatever they taught you about how to code, it's dead. So you don't learn useful skills other than maybe some science skills or like law and stuff like that. Even then, you think a first-year lawyer can argue a case? No, they have to learn. So all you have to do is go in and be super curious and super willing to do whatever they tell you to do, even if you think it's stupid and wrong. And if you think it's that wrong, leave the company. And I've done that before too. But if you just think it's the wrong strategic direction, do it anyway, right? And then you can ask a question, okay, why are we doing that? Because I thought about doing this. And maybe the boss goes, it's a good idea. Let's do it. And that's how I became a 6 millionaire at 26, was by just asking questions. It took me 2 jobs to get fired from a couple of jobs before I figured that out. So that's the real advice. But you're not supposed to know. You won't be doing anything related to what you studied in a while, unless you maybe a doctor, maybe a lawyer, something like that. And even then, I was a Burning Man, or I've only been like 10 times. And at the temple where people go to let go of things, I saw the LSAT manuals. This is a set of, really heavy, like 50 pounds worth of books, and written on it in a marker. This is the place that's going to burn to let go of things. It's, fuck you, mom and dad, I'm not going to law school. There's the pressure from parents or society to tell you what you have to do. You have to do anything. You really don't. So if you get the right job or the wrong job, how will you ever know? There's just perfectionism, which is toxic, and they use perfectionism to control you. You get a job at McKinsey versus Accenture or whatever the hell. I don't even know the management consulting names, because I generally don't hire the big ones these days. It doesn't matter. Oh, Microsoft versus Google. They're both big evil companies. Who cares? Pick one. It doesn't matter, right? There's no way you can know. I've transitioned careers so many times. I've had so many different roles. What right do I have to be a VP of corporate development, VP of marketing with a degree in IT, right? Well, I don't know, figured it out.
But you also had the courage to step into the fear.
Oh, yeah.
Because I'm guessing even Dave Asprey experienced a little imposter syndrome when he was young.
Oh, absolutely. I also had some arrogance, to be honest, but that's also usually hiding imposter syndrome. I remember the first time I gave a talk to 1,500 people. This is one of the first big meetings of people who ran websites. And I was so terrified being on stage. I don't remember anything I said, but I remember everyone applauded. And then I ended up getting asked to speak over and over. And I realized I suck at speaking. So I signed up to teach classes at the University of California, and I ran the web and internet infrastructure program within a couple of years. I'm teaching 4 nights a week to 50 people. You think I'm afraid of speaking in front of people after thousands of hours? No. Then people say, but Dave, you've been on stage with Tony Robbins in front of 15,000 people and all this stuff. Everything just comes to you. Guys, I spent like 15 years teaching myself how to speak and how to teach and how to write, how to communicate about stuff that I was passionate about. And then I started talking about losing weight and increasing your IQ and having more energy. That stuff's easy. Try talking about antivirus software to a room full of people. That was hard. God, gross. So it's practice, and you might suck. Who cares? We all suck at stuff when we try it. So suck harder until you suck less. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's the fear.
It's the fear, and it's the fear of failure, of getting fired. I've been fired twice in my 40s, and I've come to realize, but I came to realize shortly after I was fired what a gift it was.
Oh. Here's a piece of advice for our listeners. I wrote a book called Game Changers, not the weird vegan documentary that came after my book. I interviewed 400 people on my podcast about what made them successful. And I used technology to find out what are the common patterns. And one of the stories I tell in the book is about rejection therapy. This is about a guy who decided he was so terrified of hearing a no that he was going to ask for ridiculous things every day until he heard a no for 30 days. So every day he'd wake up and he'd go to the donut store and say, can you make me an Olympic ring donut? And they're like, okay. He's like, I gotta find someone else. And he'd ask for a burger refill. And they're like, okay, who does that? And he's going, it's really hard. People say yes way more than I thought. But he heard no enough times that he didn't feel like he was gonna die. So get fired. It's okay. You're not gonna die. Miss a flight. You're not going to die. And then the next time someone threatens to fire you, you're like, I'm not going to die. And the next time you're late to the airport, like, I'm not going to die. And your performance goes up. Very few things will kill you. So it just feels like they're all going to kill you. And understanding that your body is so heavily weighted to fear that people use it to control you in marketing and in society. I don't care about your grades. I don't care where you went to school. I care what you can do. And I care whether you are a liar or whether you're high integrity. So do that. I care whether you're willing to try something you don't know how to do. If you just do that, I probably want to hire you, and so does everyone else, and you can be high performance in the world. So my advice would be ask for things until you hear a no, and then read a book on negotiation. It's amazing what'll happen. My friend Chris Voss, an FBI negotiator, I think his book was it Never Split the Difference? He's been on my show, and read a book on negotiation. Learn how to ask for yes more often, and learn how to hear no over and over, and just hear no as that's the person who hasn't said yes yet.
In particular, it's because of the journey that you've had. Like, it wasn't that everything fell into place for you, right? Right out of the gate. And because you say crazy shit, Dave, that blows up on the internet.
Well, I only say truthful crazy shit. Let's be clear.
Okay, well here's one of them, that you should smoke cigarettes rather than eat French fries. Is that really true?
I don't think you should do either one. But if you offered me a plate of French fries and a cigarette and said you have to do one of the two, the cigarette causes inflammation for less time than the French fries. And the cigarette has nicotine, which at least is a smart drug. So smoking, bad. French fries, worse. So choosing the lesser of two evils is a good strategy. But, if you're watching this, I hope that you'll recognize that maybe deep fried stuff, you can handle it now, but it does reduce your IQ the next day. It does give you bad skin. It is one of the main reasons that hormone levels, especially testosterone in young men and women, are half of where they should be. It's because of food.
Yes. And I want to dig into that because this is about much more than curly fries.
What's happening is you can starve yourself and be thin for a little while, but the amount of biological stress you're under from eating junk food, from not eating healthy animal products that are part of the human diet. By the way, I've been a vegan and a raw vegan and tried all that and it wrecked my health like it does for most people. You might even get away with it for a couple of years when you're young, but what you're doing is you're stealing from the future. And it's pretty easy to be impressionable when you're college age, right? In fact, this is why so many politicians are trying to get into the school program so they can program your mind. And so many food companies are in there with their propaganda. The reality is that if you are nourished by your food, it has enough minerals, it has enough of the kind of fats that are in you, which isn't canola oil, and it has enough protein. You are made of animal protein. If it has enough of those, your body says, oh, thank God there's not a famine. I can relax. And when your body relaxes, suddenly your boyfriend or girlfriend isn't so mean. Suddenly the class isn't so hard because you're showing up better in your own life. So I would guess that 2/3 of the stress that I felt in college was diet induced and environmentally induced. When your body is stressed, whether it's from starving yourself, whether it's from eating a bunch of junk food, staying up all night, which I was very good at, or, binge drinking 6 nights a week, which I was also good at. So all those things, well, they take a biological toll. So the body is like, something's wrong. And then it tells you that something's wrong. And then you look around to find something that must be the cause. And then the other part is, the voice in your head. That can be kind of an abusive voice. It can be mean to you. And then there are mean people in the world too, right? So all of this is you're trying to figure out, how are things supposed to be, right? You're not supposed to know how they're supposed to be. You're in your early 20s, you're figuring out a map of power structures in the world and how society works and what behavioral things work. And you're finding your tribe and finding partners. In the midst of all that, if your body's screaming all the time because it's soaking in toxins and it's malnourished, is it any wonder that everything sucks?
Exactly. I know you have written about the ancient bacteria that's in our body. And unless you're a biology major or you're somebody who maybe has a side interest in functional medicine, which, let's be real, most students don't, you're not going to know about what is causing all those cravings. And a lot of young people, a lot of older people think like, why don't I have more self-control? Like, why is it that 11 o'clock or midnight comes around and I'm like eating an entire thing of Oreos?
Wow. Well, let me explain how the body really makes a decision. Inside of you, there are trillions of ancient bacteria. They're called mitochondria. We all remember them from maybe 7th grade biology class, and they're the power plants of the cells. Really what happened, though, is a couple billion years ago, some kind of cell was floating around in the ocean, and then these mitochondria bacteria were around. They invaded the cell, they took over, and they're like, we have a mobile petri dish that'll do whatever we tell it. And they're still in charge of us today. And they aren't just power plants, they make decisions. They're little computers. So what they do is they sense the environment with the intelligence of a bacteria, unfortunately, and they run a bacteria operating system, and we're based on that. And here's what it does in order. Number 1, if something is scary, run away from, kill, or hide from it. So that's fear. It's an F word. And then if something's not scary, what's next? Eat everything, because there might be a famine. So we have fear, we have food, and there's something else that all life on Earth has to do to stay around for multiple generations. It's also an F word. Andrea, what is it?
It's fuck.
Fertility. God, you're dropping F-bombs on your show.
Absolutely.
Okay.
It's one of my favorite words.
Fear, food, fucking. And the 4th thing the bacteria do is they make yogurt. It's friend. In order. So this is where your energy goes all day. And this happens before your brain gets any information about the environment around you. So if the body, these ancient bacteria, decide that it's a scary situation, maybe you're walking up to that attractive woman and your heart's racing and your palms are sweaty. That certainly has happened to me, especially when I was 300 pounds in college, because rejection feels like death. So now this is the signal from your body. And then, of course, you choke up. It's because the F words are processing and it felt that way and it affected your behavior. And then you say, what's wrong with me? Well, the reason, nothing's wrong with you. Everything bad that you've ever done, when you procrastinated or you didn't take an opportunity, it was fear. When you ate the entire gallon of Ben & Jerry's, that was food. When you went on dates with 3 people in the same night, maybe that was the other F word, right? And whatever energy is left after all that, that's forming your tribe and your community. And you allocate energy according to this automatically before you can think. So there's nothing wrong with you. If you are not feeling energy today, it means something's wrong with your hardware. And this came to a head for me because when I was getting my MBA, I almost failed out of class. I'm thinking I'm at Wharton. It's kind of a big school. And I like to think I'm pretty smart. I come from a family with PhD scientists, grandparents, and all that. But I was failing. I just could not look at the page and I just couldn't make any sense of it. So I went and I got a brain scan. And it turns out every time I tried to concentrate, there was zero metabolic activity in my brain. I thought it was a lack of trying. I thought it was a moral failure. Just I wasn't good enough. I was weak. I was dumb. And it turns out I had a hardware problem and it was hackable. And that led indirectly to the birth of the biohacking movement that I started. Because, well, wait, what does your body listen to? Your body listens to the environment around you and inside of you. You change that environment and magically you have control of your biology. And that's why I'm around 6% body fat right now. I'm never hungry. And I was obese. My Dave, prove you were fat photo. I was 22. I'm in Entrepreneur Magazine because I started the first company that ever sold anything over the internet before we had a web browser. We didn't even have the word e-commerce yet. And so I'm like, well, 1 million people saw my fat picture in a double extra large t-shirt. I'm pretty sure I was fat, but no one believes it because I'm lean and healthy. How did it happen? It happened because I learned what environmental things cause this. Sleep cycles, hot and cold exposure, the type of food you eat, the amount of animal protein in your food versus carbs or even plant proteins that just don't do the same thing, the amount of fake oils that you eat, and the amount of perfume from your personal care products, that is causing testosterone to go down. So if you're thinking, oh, I want to go out this weekend, I want to smell attractive, and you put on a bottle of things that lower your hormones and disrupt everyone in the room, the least sexy thing you can do is smell like a chemical factory. The most sexy thing you can do is eat good food so your pheromones turn on and you just smell incredibly attractive to whoever you're attracted to or whoever's attracted to you. But it's a really big difference. So hiding what's going on in your body from other people, it just doesn't work. So there's so much bad advice I got as a teenager.
So what are some quick hacks, cheap hacks that college students can integrate beyond not wearing perfume or cologne or...
And here's a couple ones that'll save you money. Real easy. Number one, throw out all of your weird body washes and crap like that. Buy a bar of actual real soap. It'll last for a lot longer. It costs a lot less. And you don't get endocrine disruptors. Just get it with essential oils or fragrance free. And when you do that, magically you'll have healthier skin and healthier hormones. Number two, throw away any air fresheners or fabric softener in your environment. If your place smells like crap, hiding it with more crap that breaks your testosterone is a bad strategy. Take the money you save and buy a cheap air filter. That would be a really good idea. Or just don't buy one and don't spread chemicals to make yourself feel better. Febreze does not clean your clothes or your skin, and it doesn't belong in your environment or on your body. So throwing away smelly stuff, really easy strategy, and usually you just save money. Fabric softener is a waste of time and money. Toss it. You don't need to smell like that.
Yeah. What about on the food front? Because as I mentioned, Chick-fil-A, Burger King, Five Guys, all that stuff is cheap, and college kids don't have a lot of money.
It turns out fast food isn't very cheap at all. It's highly addictive, and they put chemicals in it to make it addictive. So you have a craving for those fries. It's a real craving. It's an addictive craving. It's not cheap because if you were to learn how to cook, so unless you're in a dorm or something like that, you can cook and it's dirt cheap. So what you do is you go to the store and you buy a large cut of affordable meat. Yes, it's better if it's grass-fed, organic, and raised by monks, but it doesn't have to be, right? And then if you don't know how to cook, you just chop it into 1-inch cubes. This should cost you about $2.50 a pound. A pound, guys. You can't buy anything for $2.50 at Burger King, right? And you throw it in simmering water with some herbs and some salt. And you have this weird thing called soup. You want to make it more affordable? Add a few handfuls of rice, and it'll cook with the rice. And then you have something that's actually a meal.
Yeah, and probably more than one meal.
Oh yeah, you can cook for several days that way. So it's not expensive at all. The cheapest foods today on a per calorie and a per nutrient basis are still meat and eggs. Oh, and grass-fed butter. You can splurge on that. It's $4 for a pound of grass-fed Kerrygold or some other brand of butter. And if you have extra money, spend it on veggies. I promise you, veggies are not going to get you through your final exam. If you ate only veggies, you'll just be hungry. I say this as a devout former vegan and raw vegan and all that kind of nonsense. You shouldn't be hungry for 4 hours after you eat. Oh, now you don't have to graze. And someone offers you potato chips, you just don't want them. It's one thing to say, I'm a good person, I have willpower. You will lose, you'll eat half the bag of chips and think you're a bad person. I did too. But if instead you ate right, like, actually, I'm full, you'll probably find that you really only need 2 or 3 meals a day. And you're so full. If you're in college, you're on a budget, the cheapest thing you can get is whey protein. Add 50 grams of whey protein per day. It's going to cost you about $1.50. And when you do that, you're like, oh my God, I'm not hungry all the time. Wow, I'm growing muscles. Wow, I got lean. My cravings went away. My brain performance went up. My skin got better. And you have these evil corporations trying to convince you that the cheapest peasant food with the most toxins is somehow the most nutritious, because they realize it's expensive to give you quality food. And if they can convince you crappy food is quality food, they win and you lose. And when you lose, you get sick. And when you get sick, their partners in the pharmaceutical companies are just waiting to help out. So you can opt out of that whole system, and it starts on your plate, and you save money with the stuff that I teach in the Bulletproof Diet or on my blog. It's just not that hard. When I started on this path, I was like, exercise will make me lose weight. I went to the gym 6 days a week, 90 minutes a day for 18 months straight, religiously. I did it during dead week, during finals. I did it when I was sick, like with strep throat. It didn't matter. It was like, this is my top priority. It's ahead of dating. It's ahead of career. It's ahead of anything. And at the end of 18 months, just grinding it out, and I was on a low-fat diet, semi-vegetarian, restricting calories, hungry all the time, like gnawing hunger. You think I look like this, right? I still had a 46-inch waist. I still weigh 300 pounds. But I could lift everything in the gym. You can be strong and fat. The reality is that if your hormones are broken, you won't lose weight. And all the things they tell you, no. You don't lose weight in the gym. You get muscle in the gym, which helps a little bit. You lose weight with what you put on your plate. Yeah. And funny enough, you get smarter. Your brain works better. So if they'd have just told me that in college, Dave, eat good fats, don't eat bad fats, avoid all the processed foods and flavorings because they make you stupid and then you fail your classes, maybe I would have done better than my 1.28 GPA my first semester in college. Can't believe they let me stay.
Something you've also talked about is, and you've alluded to it already, is the importance of seeking out people with wisdom. And as whether you're an intern, whether you're a new grad, whether you are working at a big company or small company, to find the people at that place who are smarter than you are, who have wisdom, maybe even have gray hair, to get their advice as a mentor or even as an apprentice.
It's the cheapest thing you could ever do, is find someone who's 20 or even 30 years, or in my case, sometimes some of them are 50 or 60 years older than me, and just say, how do I do this? And they're like, you mean you want to know? And then they just give you a lifetime worth of wisdom over lunch, and you can talk about the problem, and they just know what to do. Like one time I was talking with a guy about 20 years old. I was really struggling at Bulletproof, and I had a problem with my executive team that I didn't know how to solve. It's my first time being a CEO of a company that size. And I explained the behavior, and it turns out it was a narcissistic situation. Narcissism is something that's worth studying, just because these are people who can wreck what you're doing in a relationship or in a job, and it just makes you feel like you're crazy. I was starting to feel like I was crazy. And this guy, his name was Ken, he just looks at me and he hands me his phone. He said, so we're going to fire her with your phone or my phone? I go, what do you mean? He said, well, I can't fire her. She's doing stuff. And he goes, if a bus hit her, what would happen? Would the company die? I said, no, we'd make do. He said, okay, then a bus hit her. You need to fire her now. I was like, oh my God, this guy is, I said, where did you learn all this? He goes, Jack Welch. Jack Welch was the most successful CEO of GE and one of the most famous business leaders generation before this. I'm like, what the heck? How did you get in touch with Jack? He said, oh, I asked him a question about 20 years ago, and we ended up striking up a conversation. I asked him if he'd be willing to answer a question for me every now and then. We got to be friends. You can do the same thing, right? And does Ken offer me good advice? Yeah. And do I have other people who are just, I'm overflowing with whether it's, spiritual gurus, saying, oh, Dave, here's how to do that meditation thing, or business people. They all just want to help people who are trying. So all you have to do is exhibit that you care, you're passionate, you're curious, you're non-judgmental, and you're willing to take at least some of their advice and try it and talk about what worked and what didn't. It makes people happy to help you. You are giving a gift to the mentor. You don't owe them anything. You're giving them your energy and your curiosity, and you're giving them a chance to take a lifetime of knowledge, compress it into an hour or two of shared stuff, and it feels really good to help other people. It's one of the reasons I keep writing books. I just imagine the people reading it and not going through all the crap I did.
Oh, yeah, it's coming from your heart.
Yeah.
So I just have a couple of questions left. I know that you are a dad to two beautiful teenage souls, and obviously care deeply about not only them, but their generation. What words of wisdom can you offer Gen Z to ease their fear, to ease their anxiety about their future and their deep longing to build a happy life?
You're not alone. Every generation has a longing to build a happy life. Every generation swears about the one before them and all the bad stuff they did. And there's all sorts of pressures. Some are real, some are not. But the reality is, even if things are hard, and I've only eaten rice and beans because it was all I could afford until the next pay period. I've been there and I've done that. I shared a 1-bedroom slum with someone for most of college because it was all I could afford. And the reality is, you do have magic in your world. You do have a completely unknowable future. It'll have really good stuff in it. It'll have really bad stuff in it. The one constant is how you respond, how you choose to respond, and how you're able to respond. Can you maintain your state even if things don't go the way that you want them to go? Can you take something that looks like an absolute disaster, like I did my health, and turn it into something that's magical? It's allowed me to help millions of people because I was pretty sick when I was in college. You just don't know. But if you just can keep the curiosity, and you can keep gratitude, and you can forgive the people who wrong you, magic happens all around you all the time. And it sounds hard because it is hard. And it means you've got to do breath work or meditation and focus on the stuff they don't teach you in college. The stuff about how to be a good human being who's in charge of your own faculties. If you can do that, it doesn't really matter what some dumb politician does. It just doesn't matter. And if your boss is an asshole, get a different boss. Start your own thing. And I would focus right now on learning how to be happy no matter what's happening. And I would start looking at how do I build tools to have financial freedom sooner? Because it makes a difference. And if you're like, Dave, that's a really big mountain, it feels like a really big mountain because you're tired, because you're anxious, probably because you're poisoned by eating the wrong stuff. And like I said, I started a $100 million a year company when I had $10,000 to my name. I worked in a 90-degree warehouse putting coil springs and engine gaskets in boxes for 5 years. So I've done this shit work. I've eaten in taco trucks a lot during that time. You know, the ones that the field workers work in, the best and most affordable burritos you're ever going to get. And look where I am now. I couldn't have predicted I'd be here. The odds of me being with my shirt off in Men's Health with abs when I'm a 300-pound computer hacker, like you can't predict anything. So instead of worrying about what you can't predict and you can't control, focus on how do I be happy today? How do I have gratitude before I go to sleep? How do I get better sleep? Do the cheap stuff that just makes you more powerful, more focused, more present, more loving, and more kind. And if you can be a kind and a truthful person to yourself and others, the world works it out for you.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Final question. You've done thousands of interviews. Mm-hmm. What is the one question no one's ever asked you that you wish they had?
Are you doing all this stuff just because you're afraid of being sick or you're afraid of dying? So I'm one of the leaders in the field of advanced radical longevity. I've written a major book on it, run a nonprofit for years. So I'm literally planning to live to at least 180. And that's not a joke. I just think we can do 50% better than our current best in 100 years. Because 100 years ago, we were pretty crappy. And today we know a lot. Like, it just seems obvious, but it's not obvious to people who live looking backwards. So that could be because I'm just terrified of dying. And some people in that field are. And maybe I'm doing all this health stuff and biohacking because I am terrified of being fat and in pain again. And I'll be perfectly clear. When I started my path, especially on health, yeah, I was afraid I was going to have MS or lupus. I bought disability insurance. I was afraid I couldn't eat because I would fire myself because my brain wasn't working. I was really sick. And that was the beginning of it. But at a certain point, I healed all that a long time ago. Like, why would I stop? So now what's fueling me is curiosity. I have no idea how much I can reverse my age. I have no idea how well my brain can work. And I have no idea which additional advanced spiritual or performance states I can unlock, but I can do stuff that isn't supposed to be possible. But what's motivating me now is not fear of being sick. It's not proving anything to anyone. It's just that I don't want people to go through what I went through. So what's motivating me now is curiosity. What could I do if I'm going to be around for 180 years? Like, which global problems can we fix? How's it going to turn out? What's it going to look like 20 years from now? Because 20 years ago was pretty different. And just to have this really long time frame, it's super cool. So no, my motivation isn't those, but it was. And I'll just tell you, if you're listening to this and you're afraid of dying, you should probably work on that, because last time I checked, we're all going to do it. So it makes as much sense to be afraid of dying as it does to be afraid of being born. It's going to happen. Just live a really good life and make it a good death. And then you've really done it right.
Dave Asprey is the author of 8 books, 4 of them New York Times bestsellers, including his most recent one, Smarter, Not Harder. He's also got the 10th annual biohacking conference that is coming up later this spring at the end of May. You want to go to biohackingconference.com, right? To find out more about it. You also want to definitely tune into the Human Upgrade podcast, which is where we're filming this interview right on the set. It is amazing. Dave has so many incredible guests. Dave, I want to thank you so much. I have so much gratitude for you carving out so much time in your day. You are such a busy guy to speak to me and share your wisdom with the This Magic Life community. And I want to wish you and your kids and everyone you love many, many, many more magical moments to come.
Thanks, Andrea.
Let's go.
Thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of This Magic Life. Our mission is to inspire you to stop fearing your future and start getting excited about all the serendipitous and magical opportunities that await you. Make sure to subscribe to This Magic Life on YouTube so you don't miss any new episodes. And for on-the-go listening, give us a follow wherever you like to listen to your podcasts. We absolutely love to get feedback from the This Magic Life community, so make sure to drop us a comment on YouTube or a 5-star review on Apple. And you can always stay in touch with me on LinkedIn at Andrea Koppel, aka the Career Magic Maker. Hope to see you soon.